Welcome to my podcast. My name is Corrinala, and I come to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live with my husband, 2 horses that I adopted from the Bureau of Land Management Wildhorse Adoption Program, and 2 kitties we adopted from the local animal shelter. Information about these adoption programs will be in the show notes for every episode. The purpose of this podcast is to share real-life stories that hopefully are relatable to other crafters who might be interested in horses. The format of this podcast starts with a walk to the barn to feed the horses, catch up on the week, share my knitting projects, and other interests like bicycling or hiking. I also talk about vegetable gardening and cooking. I hope you bring your favorite beverage and a fun, crafty project to work on. Enjoy! Good morning, friends. Happy Friday. It is May 1st, 2026. We're going to make our way out to the barn and feed the horses. I have a finished object for you today. I have some ketchup. I have a new cast on. I have a weekend where it's just me. Randy just left for a bicycle trip with some friends. It's been a very long time since he's been able to do that for a variety of reasons. So first we are turning on the water out to the barn. So, and it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. Today Bragi has a lesson. We are prepping for the clinic that he's going to in a couple weeks. I have a riding lesson this afternoon on a school horse. And Odin got the approval from my veterinarian to have a little bit more hay, which I think makes him happy. The vet thought his diet had been working very well, and he is at his goal weight, which I can't tell what that is. I would say it's just a little over 1,100 pounds, because last time I put on the weight tape, he puffed out as if I was tightening a cinch or a girth. So that wasn't helpful. So then I just had to send some pictures to my vet of what his body condition is, and she thought he looked pretty good. He still has some cushion on him. He's just that kind of a horse. I mean, some of us are that kind of people where we just carry some extra cushion on us, and it's just fine. It means we're perfectly healthy for who we are. Let's duck under the fence. What else has been going? Oh, Randy and I took a trip last weekend and did a lot of bicycling, so I will talk about that later as well. But let's see what the horses are up to. Bragi must be in his stall because I don't see him in his pen, so that's good. Hi, O. O is waiting for his breakfast. Bragi is probably finishing his dinner. You hear the beautiful birds. All right, I'm gonna get to feeding. Hi friends, welcome to the knitting portion of this episode. What's going on? What do you notice immediately? I'm wearing my Easter basket cowl. So this is a pattern by Stephanie Lotven, also known as Telly Bean Knits. And let's see if I can talk you through the sections. So the first section is knit in the flat, and this is a Woolen Women Denim and Daisies colorway. This is a Knit Pick Stroll. I don't believe it has a colorway name, not that I recall. I do have my pattern linked in the pattern notes is what I'm trying to say, linked in the show notes. And then back to this Woolen Women. And then I did, I would say, sort of this abstract tulips in dark blue with medium blue leaves. And then some chicks. And this is all kind of leftover yarn, scrap yarn. So I don't know if you can see those, my little chickies. And then Easter eggs that I did white, and it's kind of hard to see the light blue in that. And then carrots with green or blue carrot tops, and then the bunnies, and then the border. It was a really fun knit. I love this shape of cowl. It's kind of a mini poncho. So easy to wear. I did modify the color arrangement a little bit. I added the orange because I couldn't, I don't know, I felt like I needed orange carrots. I needed orange feet for the chicks. So otherwise, I think when I first arranged the 6 colors that I chose, I was going to use yellow for the orange, but that didn't make sense for the chicks. So the chicks were going to be this sort of variegated Woolen Women, and then the legs wouldn't have stood out if they were just yellow, and then I would have had yellow carrots, which, you know, makes it all very abstract, and it really pulls everything together, but I like the orange as a pop of color. Then I adjusted the needle sizes significantly, so it calls for a size 4. A US size 4, which is 3.5 millimeters. I chose a US size 3, which is 3.25 for the non-colorwork sections, which, you know, that's not a big difference. It's 1/4 of a millimeter. I hope you have something nice to drink. I'm drinking green tea. And then for the colorwork, I chose a whole needle size bigger. So I used a US size 6. Is that a whole? It's not quite a whole. It's not a whole millimeter. It's 4 millimeters is the US size 6. And I think it worked out. I was a little skeptical when I finished it, but then I blocked it, and it blocked out beautifully. So my gauge is tighter when I knit colorwork. So just note to self. Which reminds me, well, before I get off on a tangent, like I said, all the show notes, I took pretty good notes on what I did. What I didn't do is document how much yarn I actually used. So some of the scraps just went back into the leftover bin. Some of them are big enough that I can make something else, like this white color. I can make something else. And I think the yellow also, I have a significant amount. So my tangent is I signed up for some classes at Fiber Fusion Northwest. I went to that fiber festival last year. It's not too far from here. It's about 30 minutes or so from here. It's a pretty small venue. It's free to get in, and the classes are wonderful. So last year I took a colorwork, how to doodle colorwork class from Jamie Lomax of Pacific Knit Co. She's coming back this year doing the same class. I am, however, taking a class in sashiko mending, so needle and thread, which I have to admit I'm not particularly proficient at, but I really love the idea of mending with design and pops of color. So looking forward to that. And I do have some embroidery thread, so I hope that is what it takes. I have some yellow that came in one of my Woolen Women boxes. And then the other class I'm taking is a two-handed colorwork class. And I do knit colorwork two-handed. Normally I knit with my left hand. I'm a picker or continental style, but when I knit two-handed, I also use my right hand, which is how I learn to knit, and I'm a thrower. Interestingly, my picking is looser than my throwing. So, and it's probably because I'm right hand dominant, so it's probably a little bit more grippy. So I'm looking forward to some tips and tricks. I already have my yarn together. It's the first weekend in June, which is a whole month away. And it called for, we're going to be knitting a hat. So 3 colors and worsted weight and that contrast. So I think I have like a white, a gray, or a cream, a gray, and a kind of a red or maroon. And then US size 7 needles. So I, just thinking about this, I'll probably throw in a size 6 or 5 because there will be ribbing and on the hat, I assume. Maybe that's not a good assumption. Most hats do have ribbing, but I have knit a couple hats that are, you just start knitting in the round. So I may just throw in that extra set of needles just in case there is ribbing. Or maybe it's you start from the crown. I don't know. In any event, I would like to be prepared. So what else? What else am I wearing? Let's just finish my wardrobe first. So I'm wearing the Weir V-neck pullover. I made this out of a Barocco kind of linen wool blend. I think it's either a sport or a DK weight. And I've had this for a while. It's V-neck. It's starting to show its age. It pills, but I don't care. It's a great sweater. I love the color. Excuse me. I bought the yarn when my mom, my sister, and I were up on a long weekend trip at Grand Marais in Minnesota. And is that 2018? It was before the pandemic. It was either 2018 or 2019. So I'm actually thinking it was 2019 that we did that. So super fun and good memories from that. Grand Marais is a wonderful place. It's up in northern Minnesota. Is that Lake Superior? It must be Lake Superior, just way on the northwest corner. What else is going on? Shall we talk about whips? The title of this episode is Losing at Yarn Chicken and a new cast on. So let's talk about losing at Yarn Chicken first. So in this bag, I am knitting The Traveler by Andrea Mowry. And for the most part, I have been knitting. I thought I had plenty of yarn, but then, and I did, but then I decided to reduce the amount of ease that this sweater calls for. So I'm already giving away the yarn chicken part. This sweater is tended to have like 6 to 10 inches of positive ease. I am not particularly excited by that. So I reduced the amount of positive ease so it's a little bit more close fitting. And I added a little bit of length because when you have the positive ease, of course, it droops a bit and adds. So all that to say, I just wanted the sweater to fit the way I want it to fit. And I'm using 2 different colors. You can see the ribbing is in this rust color. The main color is this variegated. Both of these are Cascade 220 sport weight yarn. And I knew I was getting close when I was doing the back. So it's knit in the round for the most part, but then you do the back and front shaping. So I have this section of the back that is in this rust color. And the sleeves will also be rust color. You can see I started on the sleeves. So I learned mattress stitch. I'd never done it before, or at least not that I knew of. So it makes a very nice joining seam. And no, that's not mattress stitch. This is mattress stitch right here. So the extra cast on for the sleeves, we had mattress and 3 needle bind off. That was something else I had done, never had done before. So I learned that too. So my thinking is that I'm going to do the sleeves and then this is going to have a hood that is in this color. And I was thinking that the hood is pretty much going to cover this piece. So the other thing I will say that this piece will be behind me. I won't see it. People might see it if they watch me walk away or something, but I'm not particularly worried about it. So you know, that's what makes it a custom piece. So I just barely start. I think I'm on row 2 of the sleeve. So I did the 3 needle bind off last night, and I did the mattress stitch this morning, and then put the sleeves on, or picked up for sleeves. So that's where I'm at with this. And that project is also in my show notes. This is for a knit along that goes through the end of this month. So I am gonna have to prioritize this project. And let's talk about another old friend that I've been working on for a while. That is just, you know, it's just plugging along. This is in a bag made by my husband. He has an industrial sewing machine. This is a faux leather, so it's falling apart here because this is a well-loved bag. And the belt, the handles are a belt that his mom gave him when he was in high school. So it's nice to be able to use this and, you know, just sort of have that connection. His mom has passed, 9 years ago now. And then it's lined with this lovely wool felt. So this is the sock arms cardigan. I made it a pullover. And I am on the ribbing for the first sleeve. Hooray! So the sleeve is a Freckled Whimsey. Jeepers Creepers is the colorway. Self-striping yarn. It was one of the Halloween colorways. The main body is in the colorway Clarity, and it's Knit Picks Gloss, which is a merino silk blend, so not super wash. This is going to be a bit oversized. I'm making peace with it. Let me just put it that way. I'm going to hopefully bring like the neck in with the ribbing. So I haven't decided whether I'm going to do the ribbing in the main color or the Jeepers Creepers. I do have this much of the main color, so I'm tempted to use that up. Stay tuned. I'm using, I think these were, the main body and the sleeves were knit in US size 4. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm doing the ribbing in the 2.75 millimeter needles instead of the recommended 3.25, I think. So just because I want the ribbing to pull it in a little bit better. So again, that is on my project, my Ravelry project page, if you are interested in that project. So it's from, and I refer to this book a lot, and it's in the resources section, but it is Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn by Stephanie Lotven. You can tell that I'm a big fan of Stephanie Lotven. I like her designs a lot. They're very clear, and they're just very interesting. I've knit three. This is my 4th garment out of this book, and I do plan to knit some mittens out of there as well eventually with some leftover Christmas colorway yarn. I hope you have something nice to drink. And then my new cast on, let's talk about that. So this is in the bag that wrong bag. This is the Traveler. This bag. Also made by my mom. So the one with the kitties was made by my mom, and this one was too, as a Christmas present. And this is for the knit along with the Love and Stitches membership, Knitty Natty. We're doing a knit along starting today, so I cast on, and I am using this DK merino cashmere, and this is what I crocheted my wedding shawl out of. So should have plenty of yarn because I have 2 cones. Can't remember what I think I bought this for a shawl at some point. It was a pretty fancy shawl, and I thought, well, when am I ever going to wear a fancy shawl? Well, maybe to my own wedding, but you know, we planned the wedding pretty quickly, so, and knitting 2 cones of yarn for that would have been impossible for me, and because we got engaged Christmas Eve and we got married about 7 weeks later, so in February. Anyway, The project that I am doing, so we're doing the designer that was chosen for the knitting for this knit along is called, the designer is Rebecca Clow. She is a prolific knitwear designer from Edinburgh, Scotland. And I didn't print an actual picture of it, I don't think. But it's called the Staffin Lite. And it is a lovely textured tee. So it's knit flat. So, and there's charts for every single size. So I picked the size 4. So again, the recommended ease is pretty positive. One thing I did find interesting about this pattern, at least, and the pattern itself was like 30 pages long, but I did not see a gauge, how you knit a gauge swatch and what the gauge is supposed to be. So I just picked a pattern, a size that generally works for me. And if it's a bit oversized, that's okay. It looks like it's knit from the top down. It's hard to tell. And that's probably in the notes section. Anyway, this is what I have so far. So what it looks like is ribbing, and that is right. So it's knit in the flat. There's increases pretty much every row. So you cast on a prescribed number of stitches. You start on a wrong side row. This is what this marker indicates is the right side, so I don't lose track. In fact, I'm going to move that so it's up higher. So I'm well on my way. So the Traveler is going to take priority, and then this will be probably, I think I have more time to knit in the evening, which makes sense. But it's a lot warmer in the evening, and it's hard to have that thick, squishy sweater on my lap in the evening. So we'll see. We'll see how I do that. What am I using for needle size? I think I'm using the recommended needle size, which I want to say or Chowgy Red Lace, my favorite, US size 6, so 4 millimeters. So this worked out perfectly because I was done with the color work for my Easter basket cowl, and I could just launch right into the next project. So, and this is all going according to my Stashdown plan of getting rid of my scraps, which I have a running list in my show notes if you're interested in the patterns that I plan on knitting. I don't think I have links to, oh, I do. So Weekender Light, Salty Days, Rugby Shawl, mock neck tank, sea glass sweater, some mittens, Skyline Tee, Avenue Tee, Lemontop, Year of the Horse mittens by Arne and Carlos, Lanark sweater by Rebecca Clow, and a sweater doodle by Pacific Knit Co. And then I have a sweater quantity of Rowan DK in 7 colors that I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with. Although I could certainly use that for the sweater doodle because it's in DK. So we'll see. The nice thing about the doodle sweaters, it use smaller scraps. So, and I do have a sweater quantity of like a cream color of DK weight yarn. So that's where that is. You can probably see I have my computer in my lap. So that's it for the knitting portion of this. Shall we catch up on just the life stuff? Last week I mentioned that we were leaving to go east for the weekend to ride bikes, and we did that. It was really fun. The weather was very cool in the morning on the east side of the mountains. Not frosty, but definitely upper 30s, low 40s. So it was kind of nice to just be able to take our time getting there, and then I think I wore long sleeves the entire time, and not quite kind of knee length bike shorts, just to be a little bit warmer. So the first day and I'll put pictures at the end of this of where we went. So the first day we rode from the west side of Cleellum, which is a town just over the other side of Snoqualmie Pass, and we rode west to Lake Easton. So we have been riding the Palouse to Cascade Trail in segments. Randy did the whole thing. I think I said this last time. Randy did the whole thing probably 10 or 12 or 14 years ago with some friends. And since then, there have been fires that have burned out bridges, and then those have since been replaced. And so we've been just doing some segments, and that's part of it is because I want to do that. So we rode that 24 to 26 miles on Saturday, spent the night in Cleellum, had a very nice dinner. There's a lovely restaurant called Orchards if you are from this area or travel to that area. They have very fancy things on their menu. They have vegan things on their menu, and they have burgers, so definitely more affordable things, items on their menu. So very good. The next day we rode east from, where did we start? We start so we had ridden some segments in previous years. So we started where we left off at a previous time and went east, and we rode all the way to Ellensburg and back. I remember where we started. There's a big fruit stand called Thorpe near the town of Thorpe, which is a very tiny old town, but there's a giant fruit stand right by I-90 on the north side, and the trail runs right by that, and there's trailhead parking. The whole trail is a Washington State park, which is kind of cool. And there's parking, and there's often restrooms, not always, but there's always parking and restrooms at most of these trailheads. So we went there. The trail east, it was a little, it's a gravel trail, generally fairly packed, but you want a bicycle that has a little bit wider tires, and so we rode our gravel bikes. But it was hard. I was a little saddle sore, I admit. So I was on a bit on the struggle bus. But we ended up riding all the way to Ellensburg, which was great, and then rode back, and that was 15 miles. So it was a really good weekend. Monday would have been my dad's 83rd birthday. So I wanted to take some time to reflect. So I had a couple meetings in the morning, but I took the rest of the day off and just tried to spend some time thinking about him. And I think he would have approved. My dad was a very hard worker when he was young and healthy. And I think, actually, I think he wouldn't have approved of that. I don't think he would have approved taking time off from work. I think he would have said, you should work and just think about it later or something like that. Those wouldn't have been his words, but I think that would have been the message. Still, Dad and I haven't always agreed on things. So, I do things my way. He did things his way. And so I just wanted to spend some time thinking about him, and I did that. Tuesday I had an appointment. So I actually took half that day off too. So no commuting for me in the early part of the week, and then I worked Tuesday afternoon, and then I had to commute yesterday. Wednesday was a tough day, I will admit. I worked from home, but I had a high-level meeting where I had to present what the program that I manage does to our division manager, and he had lots of questions. My supervisor was there, which was really great. That helped answer some questions and also help illustrate the bigger picture of the program. So that was super helpful. I have mentioned before that I'm kind of looking for another job. I don't know how long the funding for my position is going to last. So the other hard part of the day, I mean, the meeting was intense. I did a really good job. I felt like I told the story well. But then later I learned that one of my colleagues, whom I'm very fond of, her position's being eliminated. So funding is tight. A lot of it has to do with the lack of funding from the federal administration. I mean, where they are prioritizing funding versus some of the funding that normally goes to the state. So that's impacting us in a big way. And there was something else that happened Bragi had a hard day too, but let me talk about that a little bit later. So all that to say, I kind of had my grumpy pants on by after work that day. The next day I had to commute, but it was a beautiful day. It was a pretty easy commute in the morning. I worked a solid 8 hours and then decided I'd had enough, and then I left before traffic started getting too bad. So that yesterday was fine. It was great. So I think we're all caught up on the work stuff. Let me talk about the horsemanship stuff. So Bragi, we're getting, like I mentioned on the walk out to the barn, we're getting ready for this clinic just to kind of evaluate better ways to help Bragi be comfortable in his own skin. He's just a very uncomfortable horse. He's itchy in the spring and the summer, and he has a lot of anxiety, and he's just always on high alert. I was trying to make a comparison to a person, but I can't really think of anything appropriate, so I won't make a comparison to a person. But just always trying to help him navigate ordinary tasks. So last Friday, my trainer came, and we're just trying to introduce him to new obstacles and new things and just help him be a good citizen. And one of those things was being in the barn aisle, which of course, his stall is right by the barn aisle, but he gets in the barn aisle and he just holds his breath. It is just too much. I mean, it's a nice wide barn. You've seen it before. It's a nice wide barn aisle, but there's stuff here and there, and it's just an unfamiliar environment. And he holds his breath, and he wants to jump out of his skin. And my trainer is very good about saying, we are just going to wait here, and we're going to wait until you take a breath, and I'm here with you. I'm here to help you. And you just need to follow my lead. And it just takes him a long time. I mean, I want to say she spent at least 20 minutes in the aisleway trying to get him to just relax and calm down. So I am not ready to navigate that with him. What I can do, and what I did do, is I put his halter on him, which he was very soft and very engaged after that lesson. The next couple days. Well, actually, we weren't here Saturday and Sunday, so he had time to decompress. And then I said, well, what I can do is I can put his halter on, and I can just ask him to stand in that doorway space between his stall and the aisleway. I won't ask him go into the aisleway, but I'm not going to ask him to just stay in his stall and stare at it. He needs to be at that halfway point. Actually, not even that. I let him keep his feet in the stall, but his head in the aisleway. That was really hard for him. And I ended up giving him his emotional support cone to target, so he had something to do. And I honestly didn't have, because I was doing this during the work week, I honestly didn't have like 20 minutes to just stand there with him. So I needed to give him something to do. And he decompressed pretty quickly after that. And then after he decompressed, I let him back in his stall, and I turned him out into the pasture. So I took him out to the pasture, opened the gate, And he stood still while I took the halter off. And then as soon as I let the halter, which is really typical, he actually turned to me and was just kind of checking in with me. And I said, yeah, it's okay for you to go. And so he was like, woohoo, and he, bucking and kicking. And you have to be really careful when you turn out a horse that's kind of all bound up like that internally, because you can get kicked. That's the time where you're probably going to get injured. I was aware of that, and it was nothing malicious. He was just had a lot of energy to get rid of. So the next day, I thought I would try that again, and that was Wednesday. And well, he had a hard time getting his halter on, so I insisted. It's like, no, you need to put your halter on. So that's part of this is, he says no a lot. His first reaction is just to say, no, I don't want to do it. And he needs to understand that there are things that we have to do sometimes, and that putting on a halter is really not a big deal. I mean, it may be a big emotional experience for him because he's still hanging on to hanging out with his head in the hallway the day before. So I decided that I was going to just put the halter on, just let him take a breath, and then I was going to take it off. I wasn't going to put the halter on and then immediately go do something even harder. So he did that, took it off just fine. Well, the flies are out, so I went to put on his fly mask. And then he had I couldn't possibly do that. So then we had to have a conversation about that, about putting his halter on, his fly mask on. So we did that, and then we got through that. And then, of course, yesterday I was at work away from here all day, so I didn't get to use my lunch break to spend time with the horses. So it'll be interesting to see how he does today with my trainer. So that was a long update about Bragi. Odin, I really talked about that. He gets to have a little bit more hay because his weight's in the right place. We are up to 9 minutes of his physical therapy exercises. So that's one of the things I'm going to do today before my trainer comes, is work on that. And then I have my riding lesson this afternoon. I didn't have a riding lesson last week because the instructor was at a horse show that was scheduled into our 10 session plan. So that's where we're at with that. So I have 5 more lessons today, and then there's 5 Fridays in May. So doing that, and then I think we're off for the summer, and I hope to sign up again next for the fall session. That's all I have. Thanks for sticking with me, and have a great week. I'll catch you up on what I end up doing this weekend, my first solo weekend in a really long time. So I'm really happy Randy's able to do this. He's been looking forward to this trip, stressing about it, of course. But he did get out of here about 6 a.m. this morning. So hopefully he should be at least getting sort of close by now. So he's actually meeting a friend in the same place that we were last weekend. So that's great. And they are going to go out into do some wilderness camping and exploring with their mountain bikes. So take care, everyone, and I'll catch up with you next time.